Hello, everybody. So sorry we were spending the last few minutes technical difficulty, because technology world and stuff. So anyway, welcome to tonight's live Q&A webinar. It's Ask an Expert, hosted by No CD. I'm Tracie Ibrahim, and I am here with my absolutely fabulous co-host.
I'm April Kilduff, working at OCD, therapist and trainer, and been treating OCD for about 13 years.
It's fabulous. Yes. Yes. So we both work at OCD, and we both been treating OCD for a long time, and we are excited because this week, if you are not aware already, everybody, it is OCD Awareness Week. What a fabulous week to talk about OCD. We talk about it every week, but this week we're just going to be like a little bit extra. Fabulous. All right. Well, let's get started. And thank you all for hanging in there while we solved our technical situation. All right. Love this. Okay, our first one. Hello. Hello, Wes. Thanks for doing these. You're welcome. What should I do when I'm confronted with a situation and my initial response is to avoid? It comes almost automatically. I know April knows the answer to this question.
Well, the way I would answer it, one thing is just because you think something first or have the urge to do something automatically doesn't mean you actually have to follow that. You can just acknowledge, hey, I'm having the urge to avoid this. And I know that's my OCD because it wants me to do compulsions. So sometimes a helpful thing to keep in mind is to do the opposite, right? So if OCD says avoid, we're going to approach. If OCD says distract, we're going to focus on it. Doing the opposite is generally great advice when you are working on OCD.
That is absolutely 100%. That's what I do when managing my own OCD. Avoidance, a lot of people don't realize they're avoiding. Sometimes we make excuses to not do something and we don't realize that can be an avoidance, right? Or I'll give a good example of I just almost avoided by accident, an accidental compulsion. I was on my way to go to a yoga class, and my contamination OCD freaks me out during yoga because we're on carpet and it's dirty and stuff. And I was like, I'm going to wear a long sleeve shirt so that I don't have to, my arms will not touch the ground. And I grabbed it off the hanger and I went, that's avoidance. Just kidding. Put on the short sleeve shirt and allow that floor to touch your arms and don't avoid. So, gotta look out for that. It's a tricky one. All right. Yes, this is another one. I'm really struggling with ERP and it doesn't seem to be working for me. Any advice? Oh, I love this one. So, one thing to say is ERP will not work for you. You have to work ERP. That being said, doesn't mean you're not working your ERP. That doesn't mean anything. It means that everybody's journey is a little bit different. If you look at the research and you look at the studies to see what are the most effective ways to treat OCD, in peer-supported research, you'll find that it is indeed ERP, exposure response prevention. Sometimes we pair that with other things like ACT, acceptance commitment therapy, and other things that can be helpful along the way. But ERP is really the gold standard. And what I would recommend is this. Talk to your therapist if you're doing ERP with a therapist, I'm assuming, and share, hey, something's not going right, and problem solve what it is. You might be compulsing in one area you don't realize, which is feeding the OCD, and then you're doing really great ERP, but you don't realize you're compulsing in another area. Maybe that's why it feels hard. Maybe it's just the expectation. Recovery is not an event. It is a lifestyle, and we work on recovery from OCD.
Yeah, that was my first question when I saw that was what What makes you think it's not working? What are the expectations? Because I actually just got out of a session with a member who was really frustrated because she had done some great ERP work with me on a particular type of OCD. And then it showed up again this past month when she was really stressed out. And so I had to clarify that just because you worked on something and made a lot of progress doesn't mean you're never going to think about that thing again, right? There's a good chance you're going to think about it, but hopefully when that happens, you remember, I know what this is. I worked on this. I don't need to get all engaged with this again. Nice try, OCD, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And stick with it. Stick with it. As a wise woman once said, somebody at IOCDF, Rev K, she says, stick with the ick. And I love that. I love that because the ick it doesn't matter what your theme is. It all feels like ick. And I just love that. And it's just been kind of like my little thing lately. I'm like, you know what? It feels hard. Stick with the ick. You'll get to the other side. All right. What else do we have going on? Jody, I have been struggling with OCD. Me too. My fear is that I might have falsely confessed in the past, even though I've never done anything illegal. I'm struggling with panic attacks. Any suggestions? So many suggestions. April, what are you thinking about this? I mean, I'm seeing this is all connected in some way, potentially.
Yeah. One of the things I thought of is a recommendation I make to everybody I work with who has OCD, which is to start developing a mindset of uncertainty. And instead of listening to your OCD that's saying, oh my God, you totally falsely confessed to something, if you can say, you know what, I may or may not have falsely confessed to something. Not going to struggle with it. I'm never going to get an answer that satisfies OCD or me. So my best bet is just to acknowledge it may or may not have happened and kind of move on with my life. Especially if there haven't been any consequences so far. In terms of panic attacks, I always find it's really helpful for people to understand what's happening during panic. And the simplest way to say it is a panic attack is your body's survival system having a false alarm. And it would be a pretty crappy survival system if it hurt you or killed you in the process, right? So the best thing you can do with panic attacks, and I know I've had them for decades, they're not fun, is don't fight it. That's the worst thing you can do because it's going to prolong it. The great thing about a panic attack is that it's time limited and it's pretty much going to last for like 10 or 15 minutes because your body can't operate at survival levels for a really long time. So try not to fight it, write it out. Remember, it's a false alarm. It's going to go away.
That's absolutely true. I haven't had one in a long time, but I had one a few years ago and I hadn't had one in a long time. And I was like, whoa, having a heart attack. No, I can't breathe. Wait, I'm going to faint. Oh my gosh. Then I was like, hold on. Identify the problem. This is probably a panic attack. Mm-hmm. Okay, you might faint. Well, what if you did faint? Well, so sit down. If you faint from the sitting position, that's probably better than, stand fainting. So I sat down and I was like, well, you might as well sit and be comfy. Oh, yeah. And then I should probably remember to breathe. That's important. Oh, yeah, I don't have to remember. I breathe anyway. Oh, wait a minute. Right? I was like, who cares? Actually, I'm just going to sit here because what comes up must come down. Just like April said, everything, whether it's our distress from OCD, our anxiety produced by anything, right? You've never felt a particular thing forever. It's a good thing to remember. If you do, come see us because we've never seen that before. Just imagine just like that anxiety. It never goes away. That would be crazy. We couldn't maintain that. All right. Let's see what else we got here. ERP has made me more anxious than ever. Oh, it's working. I feel like all of my OCD themes are coming out at once. Is it worth continuing and will it ever get better? Oh, I hear a little bit of reassurance, but you know what? I feel like we can provide some information without providing reassurance. So let's start with the part where we don't provide reassurance. Will it ever get better, April?
It definitely can get better, but sometimes it gets worse before it gets better, which might be the stage you're at.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense to me. So, ERP, why, kind of understanding really basically about ERP. What is ERP? What is the E? It's exposure. It's exposing ourselves to those things that make us anxious or nervous or that make our brain tell us there's a problem when there's not a problem, right? And then there's the response prevention, which is the part where we tolerate and habituate to that feeling so that we can relearn a different way to react most of the time. Not all the time, most of the time. And that takes practice. So you will often hear people talking about OCD themes like whack-a-mole because they pop up, because OCD doesn't matter the theme. The theme is not important. It just tells us what the content is at the moment. OCD is all the same. It's just this unflavorful junk in a box. And then it comes in these different little wrappers that are like, oh, it's pedophilia OCD. That's terrible. Oh, it's contamination. That's terrible. They all 10 out of 10 distress feels like 10 out of 10 distress. That's what I hear.
Yeah, I also like to explain to people that every single person I've worked with, every single trigger in the last 13 years, they all boil down to the same thing. And that is someone's ability to accept and allow discomfort and uncertainty. That is what it's all about if you drill down far enough. So that is really the skill that we are practicing, which is going to involve feeling anxious. I think another way to help it make sense what's happening is you start therapy with your kind of anxiety here and your compulsions up here, right? And as we start doing ERP, we're going to say, let's make you anxious on purpose and let's bring down the compulsions. So, of course, you're going to be more anxious, right? That's just kind of how the process works. But what I see time and time again is if people stick with it, they start to get to that point where the anxiety does actually start to calm down.
That's stick with the ick, like Rev K says. I mean, that it's real. It is real. It's not always easy, but it gets easier with practice. I've been personally doing OCD recovery for about 17 years with myself in terms of my own treatment. And you know what? Some days are easier than others, but things don't bother me like they used to. I can still feel the same suds or the level of discomfort, but I don't care. I'm like, yes, I have accepted that I have OCD and that it's just OCD junk, and I don't have to fear it. I might feel it like, oh, that feels terrible. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not because it's OCD and I don't care. And I just keep going on with myself. That's what recovery looks like. It doesn't look like the absence of OCD. Sometimes people get a nice little break. Maybe you get some hours, some days, maybe you get weeks. I don't know. I've never gotten a day off personally. I get a couple hours at a time if I'm lucky, if I'm like not walking around. So, I don't know. Something important. As I think a lot of people are waiting for this miracle moment where they're like, I feel good and everything is right in the world. And you do. It's with OCD recovery. And you learn to tolerate those suds that we were talking about, that discomfort. So where can you get such specialized ERP treatment? Well, wherever you might know of some ERP specialists, but we have them here at NoCD. You can reach us at treatmyocd.com. We have free 15-minute consultations. For people, you can sign up just to ask questions. And we have an app that's free to download that has tools, and we are covered by most insurances at this point with major insurance companies have millions and millions of bodies of people covered, available to cover services. So please do reach out if you are interested.
Can I quickly address something that's coming up in the chat?
Yeah.
Around mindfulness and meditation. So
Please do.
The thing to know about meditation is there's different styles, and the kind of meditation that's helpful for OCD is the kind that talks about sitting in whatever is showing up and accepting whatever's showing up. We don't want to do meditations of let's all visualize our happy place and go there, because that's mental avoidance. If you actually go on YouTube, there's a couple videos that are specifically meditations for intrusive thoughts. And those are fantastic. The other thing I'd like to say is, even though it sounds like these are very at odds, when you're doing ERP and sitting with it, that is mindfulness. That is, I'm sitting here, I'm acknowledging I'm anxious at a 7. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I having the urge? Just sitting as an observer in the present with whatever ick comes up. So don't think those things are mutually exclusive. You definitely can use those things to your favor.
Absolutely. Just make sure you know what it is you're looking at, right? Because the web is a large place and it has mostly not correct information about OCD. And so make sure to check with, make sure you're looking at valid stuff. Hello, Kyler. Oh, ERP strategies. What do we suggest for someone who deals with OCD, fear of going crazy or developing a psychosis? Wonderful. Well, we definitely can't give you very specific exposures that you should personally run out and do, because we know we're not aware of your hierarchy or, things like that. But we can give you some ideas about things that we use that could be on a hierarchy that you could discuss with somebody about what might be appropriate at your level of ERP-ness. There are things online. There are things called interoceptive exposures. We have so many options. April, what do you do for people that are potentially going crazy here?
Really going crazy. I'm a big fan of doing a worst case scenario, and that applies to any trigger or subtype you will tell me, because that's a way to imagine your fear and sit with the discomfort, but just thinking about it. I also know online there's some great schizophrenia simulators that you could sit with until your anxiety comes down. There's also several people who have schizophrenia that talk about their life. So if the idea of doing those things makes you anxious and nervous, those are probably good things to head towards.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's about when you're just, you're terrified. And I always say this, I used to work with persistently mentally ill people who had been, couldn't be out in society anymore. And what's weird is that they never feared whether or not they were going crazy, which I always found interesting. None of them ever asked. They all assumed they were not, by the way. I was the crazy one, which is true. So
yeah, I feel like with OCD, it's a what if I'm psychotic or what if I become psychotic, whereas someone who is actually psychotic, they're not asking what if, they're just living in their psychosis as if that's reality.
Just like pedophilia.
Yes.
If you're questioning and avoiding, sounds like the opposite of pedophilia. If you indeed enjoy pedophilia activities, you're probably out doing them or in jail or something along. Will be soon.
Not in therapy, basically.
Not in therapy, yeah. Or maybe, yeah, so many options. Okay, we won't discuss all the options. All right, let's see. This is a kind of quick one. So anxious here about an upcoming event that may or may not happen. OCD. Yeah, pretty much. That's just like the description of OCD. It may or may not happen. That's also like the tolerating skill. It's like everything all in this sentence. Yep, sounds just like it. Oh, I love this one. Heidi, how to approach life and be your most authentic self when OCD is causing imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome happens to everybody, by the way. Therapists who first start doing therapy, doctors, dentists, probably hairstylists. Everybody comes up and goes, I don't know for sure until I feel sure. It's that uncertainty I hear in this. Do you hear uncertainty in this? I don't know if I am being my most authentic self. How will I know? And what tests can I do, April, to prove that I am being my most authentic self?
None that I know of that are going to give you a 100% answer. But I think the general advice that we would follow is you may or may not be living your most authentic self, and just take a chance and do what you think that is. And, with imposter syndrome, unless someone tells you like, oh my God, you're a fraud, you're an imposter, and you need to be fired, just keep going, right? Just because you feel this, this is one of my favorite statements. Feelings are not facts. Just because I feel like an imposter does not mean I am.
Oh my gosh, that applies to everything.
It
Just because
does.
I think I'm dying, I might not be dying. Just because I
I know.
think I'm gonna murder my dog, I may not.
Yeah.
Something
And like
crazy.
I literally use that phrase myself on a regular basis. So it's not even just like a therapy thing. It's just a good skill to recognize.
Absolutely. I lean into all of it. I am positive that I'm able to do all the things if I make that choice. I've accepted it. Jalissa, hey, can you please talk about how to handle POCD as a mom when the shame and guilt hits? Yes, maybe not seem unacceptable to me at this point. Okay, yes, early on in your ERP. So I think because you're early on in your ERP, you're probably in the phase where saying maybe not feels scary because you're afraid if you lean into the maybe half that you might become an actual pedophile or like it, or this is, and I'm saying this because this is what we hear from all of the people who are struggling with this early on. I might be, oh my gosh, and the shame and the guilt. And, the thing about it is we aren't responsible for the content of our OCD thoughts. And we have to remember that OCD isn't just intrusive thoughts. It can be images, urges, feelings, a variety of other things, right? So this happens a lot. So people will say, yeah, but it was like my children, or it was my pet, or it was my mom or dad or uncle or friend, or name all of the above people. And it feels terrible because it's personal, but it's personal because it's OCD and it attacks someone you care about. It was OCD's choice. It wasn't your choice. And so we have to separate ourselves from the content of the OCD. If my OCD is like, you're about to go fillet your children with that knife, that is my OCD's fault. I've never murdered my children, and therefore I don't have to have shame or guilt that my OCD sucks and is a jerk, because I'm a good mom and I actually don't fillet my children so far.
So far, possible.
It is possible.
I think too, the acceptance piece takes some time, right? It is definitely going to be harder at first, and these are scary thoughts to entertain. And one of the big lessons we need to remind people about and remember ourselves is that we're all allowed to think whatever we want. Thoughts are just thoughts. They don't make things happen. They don't make you a certain type of person, despite that whole I think, therefore I am. We all get to think whatever we want, and it doesn't have to mean anything. That is OCD's trick, is to come in and say, ooh, that scary, ugly thought you just had, that must mean something. That's dangerous. It doesn't. It's neutral. So keeping that in mind. I also just want to do like a shout out to this workbook because I finally just finished reading it and it's really good. The Self-Compassion Workbook for OCD by Kim Quinlan. Sorry, it's super tiny. It's really, really important to be able to give yourself some self-compassion when you're going through ERP, because OCD most definitely turns up the self-criticism. And I have found a lot of people, just the idea of being self-compassionate is an exposure because that makes them very uncomfortable. But you absolutely deserve that. And the other thing that might help to keep in mind is that OCD is smart, right? It knows how to go in for each person and figure out what does this person really care about and how can I mess with them and the inherent uncertainty there. So POCD, if anything, tells me you actually really, really care about your kids. Tracie, would you let someone with POCD babysit your kids?
I always tell my POCD members that I would prefer them to babysit my children because I'm aware they are so safe from harm. Absolutely. Yep. And if I would have known that when I needed a babysitter, I actually would have put it in my ad to like POCD preferred. True story. I would do that. All right. What to do about images that are accompanying intrusive thoughts? I can accept the thoughts and not stress about them, but the images sticks out and gives anxiety. Yes. Well, I also don't like intrusive images, and I deal with my own intrusive images the same as I deal with my intrusive thoughts. I let them be there. I don't accept them or reject them. I'm neutral. I just leave them there. There they are. That's a picture. It's a picture. It's not a picture I created, not a picture I wanted to see. I kind of one of the metaphors I use is I feel like somebody put me in a movie theater and like pinned my eyes open and I didn't choose the film. That's what it feels like. And so I just sit there and go, well, it'll end eventually. And what was I doing before it popped in my head? Oh, I was working, cooking, eating, watching a show, whatever you were doing. And I just go on with it and I just let the image sit there. Because again, we don't come up with those images. We don't come up with those, the content. It's just popping up on us. So you should be able to accept it just the same. All right. Oh, this is a fun one and very on topic for Halloween season. How do we deal with panic attacks from ERP after watching scary movies? My fear is that I'll be like the person in the movie and go crazy, and the derealization makes me feel worse, like I am. You know what? That's amazing. Can you imagine, though, if you just like felt it enough and then suddenly you're just like the star of a horror film? You would be rich. I would be not scared of that. No, I'm just kidding. April, give them some good advice. What do you think about that?
Well, I would definitely go back to what I said about panic attacks earlier and just kind of recognizing I like to really have people think about why it makes sense that they might be feeling like they're feeling, right? Scary movies are meant to be scary. They can trigger some of us more than others, right? So if I was really scared watching a scary movie, that might have set off my fight or flight panic response, right? But I can also remember that's a movie, not reality. And this is, again, a false alarm of my panic. I'm just going to let it write itself out and not resist it. And OCD likes to also sort of, one of my members once said, OCD will fight for its survival, which I think is really, really true. And so it's not going to go down without a fight. And I just lost my train of thought. You kind of just have to keep pushing back on it. And it would make sense if you're sensitive to scary movies, or if it's a certain scary movie that touches on a topic or things like that. Of course, you're going to be anxious. And if your anxiety tends to come out in a physiological way, like panic, then it's going to make sense that you panic, right? I know what I was going to say. OCD, it might start off with like, hey, here's a scary thought. Here's a scary image, right? When you start pushing back against OCD, it doesn't just say, oh, okay, you don't want to do this anymore. I'm gonna peace out over here and try this other person, right? It's gonna say no. I see what you're doing and I am not cool with it. So instead of just a thought, maybe let me give you this weird sensation or an urge or something that somehow makes it seem more real because it's not just a thought. But all of that stuff is all just OCD and intrusive. It's no more meaningful if you have a panic attack, you have a physical sensation, or an actual urge. So that's
right.
Worth keeping in mind.
That includes groanal responses, which really tend to make people scared, scarier than scary movies. Like, oh my gosh, but I had a groanal response while also thinking about that trigger. Like, welcome to OCD.
Yeah. You could also watch that same movie over and over until you just kind of get bored with it and stop having panic attacks.
That's also true. I also get triggered from scary movies, certain ones, like has like themes. Yeah, mostly like the ones where you're falling asleep and then terrible things happen while you're asleep. And then when I'm trying to sleep, then like I'm like, yeah, I'm the thing, and it's scary. And I'm like, okay, hello, those are paid actors. That's kind of crazy. Also, and then I'm like, yeah, but there are real murderers, and that's why they have scary movies to scare us. Because if you ever watch the news, there's murder on the news, and I'm like, okay, yes, fine. And it's like, is somebody coming in your window? Is it dark in your window? I'm like, probably. I'm just going to lean into this one really hard. Yes. And I'm going to go open my window and I'm going to invite them in. I'm going to sleep with it open. And if they kill me, I won't care because they'll be dead. And then I go to sleep with my suds way up. And then I'm proud of my response prevention the next morning. But you know, I got to lean into it. I really love this because I think this kind of goes with the self-compassion here that we were talking about a minute ago. I'm having what I think is a relapse, and everything I know about ERP, my brain isn't letting through. Should I consider going in for a tune-up? And I think you have to really want to separate something for a minute. There's a lapse and there's a relapse. Lapse sounds like what happened, right? Relapse is you went all the way back to the first day before you ever had ERP and you're like a hot mess of compulsions and you're doing all the things you know you shouldn't do. A lapse is normal. Backdoor spikes, maybe you weren't practicing ERP enough, maybe too much of this, a little not too much of that, not enough sleep, a little whatever. It's whatever. What do you think about tune-ups? What do you think, April? Should people come in for tune-ups when this is going on?
Normally I think about them as booster sessions, but I like the idea of a tune-up too. Usually what I would recommend is if you are starting to have lapses or noticing things coming back, reach into your ERP toolkit and start really practicing those skills. Maybe go back to doing some structured ERP around that if you haven't been doing that for a while. And if that's not working for you, I think it's totally valid to come in for a tune-up, all right? And you just might need a little bit of kickstart to get back into the ERP work, or maybe some help coming up with ERP ideas. But yeah, that's how I look at it.
Absolutely. And this is a good time to talk about treatment at OCD, where we offer ERP and treatment for OCD. And you can find us at treatmyocd.com and on all of the major socials. That being said, we also, part of what we build into our treatment actually is these booster sessions, so we get you boosted up with some ERP, and then we kind of get you going on your own and get your tools all built up. And then you move out to less frequent sessions, even as little as once every 90 days, just for that little booster, that little tune-up, making sure you're okay. But sometimes after all that, then people leave and then you're like, wait a minute, I think I want to go back. You can come back and just say, just need a little booster. And we can do a booster. We can do a couple boosters. We can boost you for weeks if you want to. Or maybe you just need a day. Sometimes the people come back after whatever, a year and a half, and they're like, hey, I'm slipping a little. I'm like, come in, we'll rebuild an entire plan and send you back out the door with homework for months. So yeah, go back in for a tune-up. If you're not able to pull it together for yourself, there's nothing wrong with that. No shame in a tune-up. Therapy also isn't necessarily an event. It could be something you check in every few years because you need it. That's okay too. Things come up. Okay. We love this one. How do you deal with harm OCD if compulsions are pure O? Oh, the conversation about pure O. So, all of your thoughts, I'm going to take this. All of your thoughts that are intrusive and compulsive have to do with harm. But you're not doing any outward compulsions. In other words, you're saying you're not avoiding, you're not neutralizing, seeking reassurance. What are your thoughts on this?
So first, I think puro was a term used back in the day before anybody realized mental compulsions were a thing, right? And so I, in 13 years, have never met anybody who wasn't doing compulsions and just had obsessions. They were most likely just doing mental compulsions. And we approach it the same way as behavioral ones, which is identifying the compulsions you're doing, and and then working on preventing those or messing them up. I find that sometimes you might need some kind of counter phrase that has uncertainty in it, because it's pretty impossible to just not think a thing. So I worked with someone who his mental ritual phrase was, I was fine then, I'm fine now. Lots of reassurance. Instead of telling him, don't think that thing, I told him, when you have the urge to think that thing, please think, I was fine then, I may or may not be fine right now. Right? Add that uncertainty. And then, just using whatever your specific harm OCD triggers are to kind of set up the exposure, and then just practice resisting the mental compulsion, right? And you're not going to get it in one go. It's going to be a lot of practice. That's okay. We're building new neural pathways that will eventually become more of a default.
That's right. Yes, I made a video just the other day talking about harm OCD, and it basically was talking about a lot of people with harm OCD will end up avoiding, whether it be sharp objects or rope or any number of things that you might. Woo! Right, we have these chopping blocks at our desks because it's normal for us, because we are potential murderers and ERP therapists all the time. That's a certainty we can provide for you. We will always have knives, and we will always be providing ERP with our knives. But I was making a video about that, and I was, just like how you're just trying to like make yourself like family a little salad, and then you get the little intrusive thought, and you're like, you could use this to chop up your children. And I'm like, yes, I could, but why would I use such a small paring knife? And I will switch and get the larger and go, I must use the murder knife to cut the cucumber, because if I was going to use the small knife, it would take hours to murder the children. Maybe it's good for the cat. And then I'm like, chopping the salad, getting my stabbing arm ready. Ooh, working it out. Get the stabbing ready. Lean into it. Just because it's happening in your head doesn't mean you can't fight it off physically. You can fight it off physically. And when we say fight it off, we don't mean try to block it or stop it, because that's impossible. Fight it off with good ERP. Tolerate it. Lean into it. It's sometimes like suicidal OCD can be a form of harm OCD that happens. Like, yes, but you could. And did it mean this? And did it mean that? And the answer is maybe, maybe not. I'm just going to go on with my day. Yep. All right. Oh, hello, Jessica, who says hi, April, and Tracie.
Oh. I'm also loving Alexander's comment that Pure O sounds like a cereal brand. And now my brain wants to figure out what that cereal would look like.
Okay. I think I know, because there was a limited time cereal that was Oreos. They were Oreo O's.
Oh, yeah, that was good.
I feel like that might be the cereal to represent Pure O. Pure O with Oreo.
Oh.
So Oreo would be more tasty, though. Pure O sucks. Oreos are great. Handling, I'm going to go with this, depersonalization and derealization accompanied with or caused by OCD. All right. Let me decipher that question. Okay. Can OCD cause depersonalization and derealization? You can react to OCD with depersonalization and derealization. It can't necessarily cause it. It won't like make you depersonalize, etc. But it can certainly accompany it for a number of reasons, including avoidance and assistance in tolerating difficult things. Our body kicks in sometimes, and it's like, don't pay attention. Check out a little bit. There it is. Comfier here where I don't have to see the terrible stuff. What are your thoughts on this one, April?
I think some people's anxiety just comes out in more physical or physiological ways for some people. So you might be someone who your anxiety tends to trigger that type of sensation. I think it's actually closer to more of a panic sensation, but The idea is that you feel outside of your person, or like your body or parts of your body don't belong to you. Derealization is that this feels like a dream or a movie, like not quite right. And we actually have specific types of interoceptive exposures where you can practice that sensation and get used to it so that you don't have necessarily such an anxious response to it, right? So if you've ever gone up close to a mirror and stared directly into your eyeballs, that can sometimes create that freaky feeling, right? And so just letting that feeling be there, recognizing it comes and goes, not really very dangerous. Just happens to be how your anxiety comes out.
Absolutely. Yeah. I used to like have to check myself and be like, where are you? Come back. It's distressing, but you'll deal with it. Yes. Brianna has been doing ERP for an entire month. Congratulations. Prior to that, I was doing internal family systems for therapy, but not getting anywhere. Is it helpful after finishing ERP treatment for trauma? So, I mean, we can't really specifically tell you what kind of therapies may or may not be helpful outside of the therapies that we practice. And knowing your whole situation, right? So like we wouldn't be able to know for sure, like, is your particular therapist skilled at your particular issue, and are they going to handle it in the way that you need? So it's a little bit hard for us to make those kind of recommendations. I can say that it definitely has nothing to do with OCD. So I'm glad that you sought out an ERP therapist for your OCD. But, you know, family systems therapy talks about the way that you grew up in a family and systems and how they affect all the dynamics and such. You know, I have no idea. Sorry. That's the real truth. We really just, we can't recommend or not recommend a particular therapy for trauma, but, yeah. I guess that's really it.
I would suggest maybe Googling IFS and evidence-based treatments and see if it does connect with trauma, because I feel like I've heard that, but I cannot tell you 100%. So that would be what I would look at, is what is evidence-based for trauma, and is that one of those things?
Absolutely. That's a very valid point. Before you do any therapy, look it up. Don't just look for any evidence, because there's always weird evidence. Make sure it's peer-reviewed journals. Look for it to be coming out of like real universities that really exist, like real people, not weird paid research, etc., that gets weird results. Oh, this is so good. My partner has some kind of stomach bug, and I can't stop thinking he will die. I am driving him nuts, checking him constantly, waking him up from his much needed naps, asking him to drink something, etc. Yes, so you're compulsing because you're trying to keep him alive. The most upsetting part about all of this is that your partner will die at some point, and that's what we have to remember. We never know when anybody's going to die. That's the first uncertainty. What else we got going on with this one, April?
You are trying to control something you have absolutely no control over. And so it might feel good in the moment to check in, but it's really not going to ever make you feel better, nor is it going to make it hurt less if he does die from the stomach bug, right? So this is where I would go into kind of, all right, he may or may not die from a stomach bug. And trying to just move forward as if well, I'm trying to think now if Tracie would agree with this, right? But like, I guess where I would look at it is, unless his doctor who diagnosed him with the stomach bug said, be careful, this could kill you, I probably wouldn't spend a lot of time checking in to make sure he's alive.
Yeah, if
Right.
the doctor didn't tell you to keep him awake, like, you know, with concussion patients, so like, don't let him sleep. I'd be like, wake up, wake up. Why? The doctor said that you'll get worse problems if I don't wake you up. But, you know, conversely, what if napping is like sleep is restorative? What if you're disrupted? What if you're making it more likely that he's going to have a stomach bug for longer? Like, all of the possibilities exist. You could be helping to make sure he's alive. You could be making it worse. You could, so we accept all of those things and just say, unless somebody told me, I always say follow doctor's orders, and don't do extra because that's probably OCD. So while you're feeling better, he's not feeling great. But yeah, otherwise do what the doctor says. Let's see here. Oh, we are on the hey, what's going on questions. Oh, this one is very sweet. Sending love to all of us dealing with OCD. We are all brave for showing up daily.
Yes.
That is absolutely true. All right. What else we got going on? Mohammed, I have OCD from 4 years. I spent more than 1 hour cleaning myself after using toilet. I'm currently taking therapy sessions. It was effective at first, but now it's not that much effective. All right. So I don't know what kind of therapy you might be in. I'd start with, are you in ERP? And if you are an ERP, are you with an ERP specialist to receive proper ERP treatment? And are you following what the plan is of your treatment? Because, again, the treatment's only as effective as we use it. So when I do something compulsive, I know that my OCD symptoms get worse. It happens sometimes and I deal with it, right? But it's not because ERP isn't effective. It's because I'm not effectively using it enough. And that's why I feel more miserable than usual. And so that tends to be the situation. So, oh, Ron. Hello, Ron. Thank you. Okay. Same person is asking, should I keep taking my therapy sessions? Or should I go for medication? So neither of us.
Can I take this one?
Yeah, please say it.
Okay. So the first thing I would say is if the therapy you're doing is talk therapy, that is not enough for OCD, because we can talk to part of our brain that's rational and understands things like public doorknobs are not a means of HIV transmission. But there's another part of our brain we cannot talk to and only understands action. So if I go out and use my sleeve on a public doorknob, my brain is going to say, April, I thought we decided those public doorknobs are okay, but then you protected yourself. So apparently they're dangerous, right? We got to get both the behavior and the thinking in line. And so you're only kind of halfway there if you're doing the talk therapy, right? The behavior is crucial. In terms of meds, meds could definitely kind of help get you to a place where you feel more comfortable, confident taking on ERP, but meds aren't going to change behavior for you. So it's worth looking into medication if you haven't already, but just keep in mind it can't do the work for you.
That is absolutely true. I was reading a study out of UCLA from a long time ago about OCD, not that long ago. It's in my lifetime, but and they were saying, what is the most effective treatment for OCD? And it was teasing out, what if you just do therapy? What if you just do medication? And what if you have a combination? And it found that the least effective thing is just having medication. Because again, you didn't do anything. And medication is different for everybody. So never ask somebody what worked for you because you don't have the same DNA. You've got to go work that out with a psychiatrist who specializes in OCD, because dosing and all the things are different when it comes to OCD, and you have to talk to a specialist about that. The second most effective thing was therapy by itself, and the last was a combination. And again, that's not for everybody. I'm not on medication. I used to be. I just when I got good enough at my ERP, I just decided I'm just going to tolerate an amount of SUDS that used to be slightly helped with medication. But, I couldn't find enough relief with medications, and I tried for years to where it was worth it for me. So I have to do extra ERP. And of course, not doing the medications that just make you calm down. Like, we don't do those ever. All right. This is another delightful one. How do you get out of a spike in mental convulsions? Or do you, and you just twist out of control for like 90 years? That's also an option. I don't know if I'd like that option, though. I don't know. How do you get out of a spike? How do you get out of anything?
What I would say is you definitely can't do it until you are aware that you're doing mental compulsions and that the stuff in your head you're doing isn't just thinking about it, it is truly a compulsion. And being able to be aware of that and just call it out, like, hey, I'm ruminating right now, I'm neutralizing, and I know that's not helpful. So I'm going to redirect myself back to whatever I was doing. I'm not going to do a compulsion. Right. And it's probably going to take a lot of redirection, but just calling it out and pushing back on it is kind of the most basic approach.
Absolutely. I see a couple of things that I just wanted to address in the chat. So
I know I do too.
The first thing that I want to say is that this is not a crisis service. And if you ever do feel like you are in a crisis or at risk of doing something that is injurious to yourself or others, there is help. Don't be afraid to reach out for help. You can call 988, which is the new and improved crisis and suicide hotline, where they actually have live professionals who can talk you through your crisis and difficult moment and get you connected to things that you need. Also, you can call 911, and you can also go to your local emergency room and say that you're having a mental health emergency. The first thing you want to do is reach out for help. Don't be alone. Find somebody who can help. If you don't have anyone you can reach out to, call 911 or 988 and have them connect you with somebody who can help. This is a serious topic because it's Mental Health Month, number one. It's OCD Awareness Week, number two. And it's difficult. It's very, very difficult. And we have to be aware that it's hard and you can struggle, and it feels so real, which is the worst part of OCD for most people, is that it just feels really real because the thoughts feel real. You see images that are real, and it's really, really difficult. So be nice to yourself, get yourself stabilized in a place that you can go to be safe, and then come in for the appropriate treatment, because I swear to you, the treatment, we don't have judgment. We do not. We have heard it all. We've probably thought about it, and we've probably looked at all the pictures and talked about it for 1,000 hours, and we will help you feel comfortable and safe in treatment. But we are not a crisis service, so please do reach out to 988 or 911 if you have a crisis. Please spread the word about OCD and no CD treatment. Again, you can reach us at treatmyocd.com, free consultation. You can find out more about our cost and coverage, etc. It's been great having you all tonight. Yay! Happy OCD Awareness.
Can I touch on a couple things?
You can, and then we got to end.
I know. I'll be fast. But I think there were like some really, really good questions. And two of them were about how do I know when to end ERP? If we're talking about an ERP session, like doing one ERP, the goal we use is habituation. And that is just a big fancy word for your anxiety coming down from its highest level by half. And typically, if you can sit with it that long, that's an effective exposure. The other one was, how do I just keep doing ERP until I'm not anxious at all anymore ever? No, because that's impossible. We actually need to be anxious sometimes. It's a helpful emotion. Dr. McGrath likes to say the only people who have no anxiety are dead people. So the goal there is to help the anxiety come down and help yourself be able to resist the compulsions enough that you can move on with your life, right? So if your harm OCD spikes to a 9 right now, if you get that to where it spikes to a 3 is livable, right? Might not be perfect, but that's a realistic expectation. And then the last thing, how do you know if something's a compulsion? Here's what I look for. Is what you're about to do motivated by getting your anxiety down really fast, trying to have certainty or reassurance, or to prevent something bad from happening? That's what we look for. It's not like whatever you're doing, it's what is motivating you. That is a great question to check in with yourself about. Why am I motivated to do this thing I'm having the urge to do, or this idea I have?
That's absolutely correct. That's why we call them safety behaviors, because they give you a false sense of safety, or at least make you think you feel better for a minute. So fabulous. All right. Well, we hope to see you again next week when I'm pretty sure Dr. McGrath will be here, but uncertainty. So we'll see who's here next week. And happy OCD Awareness Week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.